And perhaps the most difficult truth is this: you cannot take everyone with you. Not every friendship is meant to endure your evolution. Not every relationship is capable of holding the weight of your becoming. And this shedding, this slow aging loss, is what makes isolation so painful. You are not just alone, you are grieving the death of old identities, old connections, old versions of yourself. But make no mistaking, this is sacred ground. You are being initiated into your own power. In the stillness you find clarity. In the silence you begin to hear the deeper rhythms of life. In the solitude, you meet the self. Not the mask, not the persona, but the raw unfilled presence that has waited patiently beneath all your roles. You will not be alone forever, but you must be alone now, not to suffer but to remember, not to retreat but to rebuild. The connections that return to you after this season of isolation, if they return, will be rooted in truth, not attachment. You will no longer beg for company that costs your authenticity. You will no longer shrink yourself to fit spaces that cannot hold your truth. You are not lost. You are not being punished. You are being prepared for a life that matches the depth of your soul. Only the ascending soul understands that isolation is not a detour. It is the path itself. There is a sacred truth that few speak of, but every ascending soul eventually learns through experience before transformation. There is chaos. Not the kind of chaos that simply disrupts your outer world, but a far deeper turmoil. A storm within your psyche, where everything stable begins to fracture. This chaos is not random. It is not a malfunction. It is the divine disruption necessary for your rebirth. You begin to feel as though nothing makes sense anymore. The beliefs that once gave your life structure begin to crumble. The identities you've worn, perhaps for years or even decades, start to feel like costumes. You may feel detached from yourself, from others, from your past and your future. Life becomes uncertain, and you may question everything: your purpose, your path, your place in the world. This is not the end. It is the crossing. What is dying is not you. What is falling apart is the shell that once protected you, the psychological scaffolding that held up your ego, your conditioning, your illusions. And though it may feel like madness, it is actually the most intelligent response the soul can have when it outgrows its container. The psyche, like nature, must undergo seasons, and winter always comes before spring. Inner chaos is winter, the stripping away, the stillness, the silence, the falling of old leaves. It feels as though everything is collapsing, but something deeper is forming beneath the surface. In fact, it is only in chaos that the psyche becomes fertile enough for transformation. Do not resist the chaos. Do not try to control it, medicate it, or numb it. Let it speak, let it move through you. The mind will beg for clarity. The ego will demand certainty. But transformation does not arrive on the terms of the ego. It arrives through surrender, through the willingness to let go of what you thought life was supposed to be, in order to meet what it is becoming. Many will misunderstand this process. Some will call it a breakdown, a crisis, or even failure, but the soul knows better. The soul recognizes this as the labor of rebirth. Every myth, every spiritual tradition, every psychological model of growth confirms the same truth: the old must die for the new to live. The pain you feel in this chaos is the pain of expansion. The confusion is the clearing of old patterns. The fear is the trembling of boundaries breaking. And what waits on the other side is not simply peace. It is authenticity. It is wholeness. It is freedom from everything that no longer belongs to your becoming. You are not being destroyed. You are being restructured. And only those who are truly ascending are summoned by such chaos, because only they are ready to be remade, not slightly improved, not patched up, but completely transformed. Let the old fall. Let the center collapse. From that ruin, your true center will rise. As you journey deeper into yourself, there comes a moment when the light no longer guides you. It blinds you. And so, the path turns inward, into the dark forest of the unconscious, where reason cannot lead and only courage can carry you forward. This is the moment the shadow appears. The shadow is everything you have hidden, denied, repressed, or disowned. It is not evil, though it may frighten you. It is not broken, though it may look distorted. It is simply you. The parts of yourself you were taught to exile to survive in a world that demanded conformity over authenticity. Most people spend their lives running from the shadow. They project it onto others, they mask it with persona, or they drown it in distractions. But for the ascending soul, this escape is no longer possible. The shadow begins to surface. in dreams, in relationships, in patterns that repeat with increasing intensity. And you begin to realize something: you are not being punished. You are being summoned. You are being called to face yourself. Not the self you show to the world, but the self that lives in the basement of your psyche, waiting to be acknowledged. The anger you suppress, the sadness you deny, the envy you pretend not to feel, the desires you judge, the wounds you avoid. All of it is part of the shadow. And all of it holds power. You begin to understand that the shadow is not your enemy. It is your unclaimed energy. It is your creativity, your intuition, your passion, your boundaries, all imprisoned in shame. The more you reject it, the more it controls you from the dark. But the moment you turn toward it with compassion, with honesty, with presence, it begins to shift. What once felt like a monster becomes a mirror. And in that mirror, you see your wholeness. To integrate the shadow is not to rid yourself of darkness. It is to bring the darkness into conscious relationship with the light. It is to become a full human being, no longer fragmented, no longer at war with yourself. You stop striving to be good, and start striving to be real. And in doing so, you become free. The world will try to shame you into staying fragmented, but your healing does not require permission. The shadow will try to scare you into staying asleep, but your soul knows this darkness is not death. It is rebirth. To meet your shadow is to reclaim your sovereignty. You stop fearing judgment. You stop begging for love. You stop performing, because now you know who you are. Not in theory, but in truth. And here's the paradox: the deeper you go into the shadow, the more light you can carry, because you are no longer afraid of yourself. You are no longer split. You become a vessel, not just of peace but of power, real power, not dominance, not control, but the unshakable strength of someone who has faced themselves and survived. Only the ascending soul is invited into this sacred confrontation, because only those who are ready to rise can be trusted to descend. The shadow does not come to destroy you, it comes to teach you. At a certain point in the journey of the ascending soul, a shift takes place, quietly, almost imperceptibly at first. The longing that once centered on personal fulfillment begins to expand. What once was a quest for your own healing, your own truth, your own freedom, starts to feel incomplete unless it is connected to something beyond yourself. This is not ambition. This is not egoic purpose. It is a calling. And it is not a calling you choose. It chooses you. You begin to feel that your pain was not in vain. That your breakdowns, your nights of despair, your wrestling with the shadow, none of it was wasted. It was all preparation. For what? For the sacred task of becoming a vessel, a bridge, a messenger, a guide. You realize that your transformation was never just for you. It was so you could become someone who carries light into dark places. Not through preaching or superiority, but through presence, through depth, through being someone who has been there. You feel drawn to serve, not because it will make you important, but because it is the only thing that feels true now. The soul that has ascended cannot return to a small life. It cannot pretend that meaning lies in accumulation or applause. It craves alignment. It craves contribution. It craves authenticity in action. This service might not be loud. It might not come with titles or recognition. It may look like listening deeply to someone who is suffering. It may look like speaking truth in a room full of silence. It may look like creating something honest in a world addicted to performance. Whatever form it takes, it carries the same essence. You become a channel through which something greater flows. But to carry this responsibility, you must let go of the need to control how you are received. You may be misunderstood. You may be rejected. The world often resists what disturbs its illusions. But you no longer serve for approval. You serve because you must. Because not doing so would be a betrayal of your soul. And that is what separates the ascending soul from the seeker, who stays stuck. The courage to follow the call even when it costs everything familiar. You stop asking, "Will this benefit me?" and start asking, "Is this what I was born to give?" This call is not always comfortable. It will stretch you, humble you, break you open again and again, but it will also fill your life with the only kind of meaning that endures. The meaning that comes from living in alignment with the truth of your soul. You realize now that your life is not just about becoming free. It is about helping others remember that they too were born free. This is the quiet, powerful paradox. The more you serve something greater, the more you become yourself. Not the self shaped by the world, but the self that was always waiting underneath. Only the ascending soul hears this call. and only the courageous answer it. If your path feels heavier, if your nights are darker, if your soul aches more than others can understand, it is not because you are cursed. It is because you are ascending, and only ascending souls face this. Rise, you are not alone, you are awakening. No tree, it is said, can grow to heaven unless its roots reach down to hell. We often misunderstand the trials we face, seeing them as punishments or misfortunes. But what if they are sacred fires, meant not to burn us down but to forge us anew? Only ascending souls, those destined to evolve, are summoned by such trials. They are not accidents, they are callings. With awareness comes a silent cost, one that is rarely spoken of, yet deeply felt by every soul on the path of ascension. When you begin to awaken to truly see, the world no longer appears as it once did. The comforting illusions that once shielded you from the deeper questions of life begin to fall away. The narrative society gave you of success, happiness, identity, become then veils you can no longer pretend to believe in. You realize that most people are not living, they are performing roles, following scripts that were handed to them long before they had the power to choose. But now, you can no longer play along. You begin to see the dysfunction in relationships, the hollowness in ambition, the madness in conformity. This is not an easy gift. It is not peaceful at first. It isolates you. It burdens you. It awakens in you a longing for authenticity so deep, so relentless, that everything false becomes unbearable. Awareness separates you from the crowd, not because you are better, but because you are called to be real in a world that worships appearances. You feel the weight of every false word, every unconscious act, every missed moment of meaning. You start to see the masks people wear, and you no longer desire to wear your own. This burden of awareness is not chosen lightly. It makes you more sensitive, more vulnerable. You feel the suffering of the world in your bones. You hear the silent cries beneath polite conversations. You sense what others are avoiding, and you are no longer able to turn away. You begin to carry something invisible, an inner responsibility not to fix others, but to become whole yourself. You feel compelled to live with integrity, to find truth even if it costs you comfort, to follow your soul's whisper even when it leads you into the unknown. And yet, this burden is sacred, because in carrying it you become something rare, a person who refuses to sleepwalk through life, a soul that chooses growth over comfort, truth over approval, depth over distraction. You are not burdened because you are broken. You are burdened because you are becoming. This is the path of the ascending soul. There comes a point on the path of inner growth where the soul must walk alone, not because it desires loneliness, but because the old surroundings, the old conversations, the old ways of being no longer match the frequency of its becoming. As you rise in awareness, you begin to feel a strange and painful distance from the world you once called home. People with whom you once shared everything now seem foreign. Places that brought comfort now feel empty. This is not abandonment, it is initiation. Isolation, in this sacred context, is not a punishment. It is a rite of passage for those who are awakening. The soul must detach from what is familiar in order to remember what is eternal. Every ancient tradition, every mythological hero, every mystic who touched the edges of truth, at some point, they withdrew. They wandered into deserts, caves, forests, mountaintops, not to escape life, but to confront it more deeply. When you are isolated, life is stripping you of distractions. It is removing the noise so that you can finally hear the voice of your own soul. You are being emptied so you can be filled with something more authentic, more eternal. This space, though it may feel hollow, is where transformation occurs. Without the usual mirrors to reflect who you've been, you begin to ask the deeper questions: who am I now? What is real in me that remains when nothing outside me agrees?